Let's talk about the government shutdown. So throughout this video, I'm gonna give you guys a few of my key reasons of why I think this is currently happening. And I would like to hear you guys' opinions in the comments, like why you think this is really going on. Not from the situation of what they're telling us on the news outlets, right? Because just before I get started, we have to realize this is how they control us as a society, the government, right? It's about division. You could divide people, then you could conquer them, right? So we have to start thinking outside of the box, right? Because it doesn't matter what side you go on, right? And left or right, them two sides have the same agenda, and it's control. And this is pretty much simply their playbook, right? So you have a person at work that's in the left. So the government for the left is just gonna say, hey, I'm gonna give you guys free everything so you don't have to work, we'll take care of you. But the problem is that person over there to the right, he hates your guts. He don't want you to have this stuff. He wants you to die and suffer, right? So then now that person for the left is like, you know what? I hate that person. I would never vote for him. And whoever votes for them must be purely evil too. I'm gonna always vote for you. Then bam, there you go. They control you now. And the same thing goes to the right? They'd say, hey, I wish I could give you more, but we can't because we have to keep giving those people free things. So it's stopping you from growing. And then that person is like, man, this is some crap. Like, I hate those people over there because all they want is free stuff and they don't want to ever work hard for nothing. You know what? Take stuff away from them. I would never vote for that side. I would only vote for you. So even they win their party too, right? So this is how they catch their voters, is by saying, hey, I give you something. Here you go. Don't vote for that person because he don't want what's good for you. I do, right? So when you are manipulated in that expectation, right, you're dependent on them. So now you're dependent on the government. So you're not going to vote for that side because they go against your morals and all of this stuff, and they know that. So they control you by giving you the things that you need to stay who you are. In order for you to get your stuff, you have to depend on me. And that's how politics controls people. So we have to learn not to be a slave to the system, right? So when they're telling us, they're painting a picture about something, usually they're doing something behind closed doors where they say, hey, focus on the noise. And then they just run from the back alley with the real problem of why they're actually doing it, okay? So this is why, like first you got to understand that part to just get to the next stages in life, because you're always going to be a pawn in their system if you don't understand how the game is being played. Okay, so let's talk about like one of the reasons why I think this is what the true reason of why this is happening. And I want you guys' opinion also in the comments. Let me know what you guys think, right? Why you think this is really going on. Because we have the central banks, right? The Federal Reserve. During Biden's administration, they had no problem cutting interest rates, right? Because when they cut interest rates, the feeling of that globally is a good thing, right? Because now they understand that when I want to start taking money out of banks, I'm gonna have a cheaper rate to pay back. I could build my businesses now. Jobs is gonna be more available. The emotions of that is more happier. People want to spend because they're getting more money. They could spend more money, right? So it's a good place to be in. So when they do that during time for voting, that's why they get away with saying that, hey, you was cutting rates because you was trying to help Biden's administration, right? And now when we are at Trump's administration, he completely just total different person, different chair, right? We're pausing interest rates now. We're concerned about inflation now. We're concerned about this. So this is why they play in that card that he is actually intentionally hurting America. So that's why the White House is saying it about Jerome Powell. But let me ask you guys, do you think if Biden would have won this administration, would Jerome Powell still be cutting interest rates? Or you think he would have still been pausing? He would have been acting the same way he is now, right? Because fiscal policy is a difference. Yes, tariffs is a fear, right? So that's what is making people believe that's why he's holding interest rates. But the reason why I think the government shutdown is actually happening, just my opinion, is in order for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates, to better the economy, to make it easier to pay back debt to them, they have to lower the interest rates, right? In order for the central banks to want to cut rates, they have to be a fear. It has to be a fear of something being broken, like a recession. Do you think the government shut down right now because now people is not working, people is not getting their food stamps, right? People ain't buying stuff because they treating the shutdown like it's a recession because it's a mental thing, right? So people's not going to buy that car. You're not going to buy that apartment. You ain't going to buy that home because you're afraid, oh, what if this shit gets worse, right? So that's people's mindset, and they know that. It's psychology. And knowing that doing this happens, it slows GDP for the United States. That causes a slowdown, that causes a recession. And when that actually happens, that fear comes in. Now that could probably force the Federal Reserve's hand to say, you know what, okay, we will have to be more aggressive on future rate cuts because things is getting worse than expected, right? That could be one possibility, because what they're trying to tell us on the news is that they're doing this because, why? Because they want to give foreigners home, like insurance, right? They want to use our money for their insurance. I think it's more to the story. They just want to paint that picture, blaming Trump and then blaming the Democrat. But that's where they want us to look, because behind the closed doors, right, if we actually see what they're doing, we'll probably be even more pissed, right? So it's just a way to make us not really focus on the bigger picture. Another thing is, because this is causing division, right? What you think is going to happen when people lose their government job, right? Now people want to travel. It's the holiday season. Those planes, they're going to be so booked because people ain't getting paid. They ain't going to be coming to work. And it's holidays, that's happening. How do you think people's emotion is going to be when people don't have money to pay for their food now? How do you think their emotion is going to be when the people's Section 8 is leaving, right? Now they're worried about where to live. How do you think they're going to be, right? The mindset of these people is going to be straight survival mode, right? Because we all been there. You know what I'm saying? It's straight survival. Not all of them is going to say, hey, let me prevent this from happening. Let me do something productive. They're going to go straight to survival mode. This is where the fear comes in, right? Of you have to worry about looting, protests, riots, and stuff like that, because this is what sets up for it. So my second thing is, like, what if this is leading into something even worse, right? What is they're using this to lead into even more division, right? Because they're trying to push something else right after this. Because if this goes on any longer, and both sides is just like, it's their fault, it's just more division. But what's going to happen to the people, because we struggle from these situations, not them, right? How do you think people is going to act when they can't put food in their house, right? And then they blame them for it. Then what's going to happen after that is most likely the reason for this government shutdown, right? So now we talked about two things. I believe the government shutdown is either because they're trying to force the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates, right? By showing a recession, right? Showing that growth is going to be a problem, right? Because what if this shutdown never happened and the Feds was able to see the data and inflation rise, growth and labor is still strong, right? That would force the Federal Reserve to pause interest rates for this meeting that just passed, right? And that's not what they want, because that would cause more strain in the economy. But what if they prevented that so they can't see the data? Because Jerome Powell said before, the reason why we cut rates now is because we had enough data in the past to show us that we should cut rates for this meeting. But for the next meeting, we're blind. So we're going to be very cautious and data dependent. But if there's no data, they know you're going to pause rates again. So what happens if they do pause rates in December? Then they come back to work, and then the data is way worse than expected. Then they have to cut rates aggressively. And that's probably what they want. You get what I'm saying? So when they open up, they already see the lockdown caused GDP to push lower. It caused people to stop working, stop spending. People was acting like it's a recession. And then now when the government opens up, they see the data a lot worse than before, a lot worse than expected. that would automatically shift the feds into cutting interest rates and then having to worry about quantitative easing because that stimulates the economy. And the US government does not care about how much debt we're in. We already know they don't care about debt, right? So they only care about stimulus. Let's get this money so we could just fund everything, right? That's all they care about, knowing that the debt is going to cause a bigger problem. But what if that's the goal, right? And then they making us look at this and thinking that this little thing is the problem. But what if they purposely doing it because they want to ruin our way of life by losing jobs, right? People don't have the food because there's more division, more problems. Blaming that person, right? What if it's number two? What if this is a problem setting up for something even more bigger to cause more division, right? So it's scary to think about. You know what I mean, guys? Like, it's very scary to think about. But if you could just think outside the box a little bit, you know, it could help you a long way. Because when you're just watching the news, you're just going to be listening to what they're saying, knowing that they lie to us 24/7, right? So hopefully this is helpful, guys. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts. Like, I could go on all day. I don't want to keep this long. I could go on all day about this, you know, but I would love to hear you guys. Have a good one. Later, guys. Peace.